All right, so with this image, I'm actually going to do a breakdown of the image, and then after I do the breakdown, I'll actually go back and show you the lighting setup on how we were able to achieve this. So off the bat, we're gonna start with the key light. The key light is the main light that I'm using to light my model who's laying in this pool of water. And I see that that light basically is kind of cutting her in half for the most part, right? So what I mean is on that line, so from this area down, that seems like there's a one light source, and then essentially from that line up in here, right? It seems like there's another light source. So just kind of keep that in mind as we dissect this. So going back to where we were here, I see in her eye, let me see if I can get in here. I see that there's somewhat of a little light source here, right? I don't see any other highlight. I see there's a light source here. And then again, going back out, I see there's another highlight here. And that highlight has like what looks to be somewhat of like a blue tint to it. That's also the reminiscent of what I'm seeing with these kind of blobs of light around here, right? So if I were to look at this image and not know anything about it, I would say, all right, there's a light source that's coming on the camera side that has no color to it, or that has like this neutral color. And then on the opposite side, or her shadow side, or the area further away from the camera, there's this blue tone that's showing up both in the water, and then it's also showing up in different areas of her face. So let me switch colors. So I'm starting to see the blue here, and I see the blue. Well, let me choose a different color. So I see the blue in this area, and obviously we see the blue here. And then it's all up and through there as well. So what that leads me to believe is that there's a key light that's lighting her, and then there's a secondary light that has a gel on it or something like that that's essentially lighting the backside of her as well as the water. All right, so let's pop in and look at some of the behind the scenes so that you can see what was actually used to get this done. All right, so with this setup, I think that it's pretty, it looks like chaos. I'm not even going to try to gas you up and say that it doesn't, but it looks like chaos. But obviously, I had to find a way to bring the water into the studio. This is a swimming pool. I got it from like Walmart or Amazon or something like that. The thing that you see in here is basically a black muslin, like the same type of muslin that you would use for a backdrop when you're taking pictures. What I realized was that because the pool had all of this green or neon colored around it, and the floor of the pool was white, it ended up creating a colored cast when the light was bouncing off of it onto the model that was really ugly. So I had to find a way to obviously still keep the pool because I needed the pool, but get rid of those extra color elements that were affecting my image in a negative way. So I just draped a black muslin inside of the pool for that purpose. Because of the floor of the pool being white, it also added additional light to the image that I didn't want. So it was kind of doing double duty by acting as some type of negative fill while at the same time getting rid of some of the color cast that was coming from the perimeter or the edges of the pool. So then we have the light. For the key light, which is this light, I used an Aputure 600D. And then I used it inside of a Parabolics umbrella. And they have, Parabolics in particular has a new light that I've since purchased called an Omni light that would have worked better in this situation, but at the time they didn't have that. So I used an Aputure 600. It had a Bowens mount adapter. I put it inside of there. That's what served as my key light. Then on the other side, I used an Aputure Nova. So let me The reason why I went with the Aputure Nova is because I knew I was going to have to try to tweak that tint or that blue light, and the Aputure Nova is an RGB light. It gave me the opportunity to basically kind of adjust that blue until it actually showed up in a manner that I thought was favorable. It wasn't an exact science. It was more so me just kind of like putting it on a blue, taking a few pictures, seeing if I liked it. If it didn't work, then I would swap or switch the color or the tint or adjust the saturation until it showed up in a manner that I really liked. I wasn't necessarily trying to make everything look realistic. I wanted it to be stylized, obviously, so that blue doesn't necessarily look like the water in Anguilla or something, but it definitely just had a blue tint that I think that subconsciously or even consciously we acknowledge that if you see blue water, it's not something strange in particular. Everything else outside of what's inside of the pool and what's lighting the pool is irrelevant, right? So like this big black flag back here or a scrim back here is not doing anything. It was just set up in the studio. This little shaggy carpet down here was just so that when the model stepped out of the pool, she had something to stand on that wasn't the concrete floor in the studio. I also have a ladder right here because that sometimes I needed to get up higher so that I could point more straight down towards her instead of shooting across the pool. And it would allow me to kind of get these different angles and allow some of that blue light that was shining from behind her to show up into the camera. So this is the setup. It was really just two constant lights. One was the Aputure 600D, and then there was the Aputure Nova. You could have swapped those lights out for Godox or any other brand of lighting. It was more so a matter of just me wanting to have constant light because I wanted everybody that was on set, which wasn't very many people. I think it was just me, the makeup artist, and the model. I wanted them to be able to see what was going on. I didn't want the flash to kind of keep going off. And I also wanted to do a really shallow depth of field, perhaps even kind of softening how crisp the water looked by being able to use a slower shutter speed, perhaps. But ultimately, I think that it ended up coming out well. Here's some examples of what we did. That's it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.